welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel, and today we are going through sector number 471. The other host this week is Millennial Mike. Welcome back, Millennial Mike.
Good to be back. Seems like we have a pretty packed show notes today, so exciting. Lots of crapping on Disney, which I'm always here for. And I'm reading these show notes. They're great. So yeah, you guys are in for a treat today.
As
Good
always,
stuff.
anytime, as I was telling you off the air, whenever there's MCU news on here or Hamadaverse news, it's usually negative stuff because that's where we're at right now. That's just where we're at. But to anyone that's new to the podcast, the way we format it is we're going to go through some news, and this week we're going to go through what's new on Netflix, and then the following week we'll do HBO Max, and we'll end it off with the Brokehead block, which is what Millennial Mike and I have been doing this week. So let's jump right in. First news story comes out of Netflix, who have revealed its very first stills to the live-action adaptation of Cowboy Bebop. Cannot wait. You were excited to talk about this. Why don't you take us through the synopsis of what Netflix gave us here?
Sure, yeah. So the official synopsis, just adjusting my scientific glasses here, Cowboy Bebop is an action-packed space western about three bounty hunters, aka cowboys, all trying to outrun the past. As different as they are deadly, Spike Spiegel, acted by John Cho, Jet Black by Mustafa Shakir, and Faye Valentine, Daniela Pineda, from scrappy, snarky crew ready to hunt down the solar system's most dangerous criminals for the right price. But they can only kick and quip their way out of so many scuffles before their past finally catches up with them. Sounds like the anime that I know and love.
You know, the first time I ever watched this anime in its completion was last year. I had watched it on Toonami growing up, caught an episode here or there, but
Never too late.
Yeah, no, and it is a timeless anime. I will say that. I'm a very super casual anime watcher. I'm as casual as they come, but the Cowboy Bebop one, I kept up with it, and I think it was successful because it is such a one and done type of season. You know, it just takes you from story to story. There's no filler episodes. It just tells what it needs to tell. I saw the movie as well, and I think it's because of that, it will translate pretty well to Netflix. I know it has its weird track record, but I'm excited to see this in spite of being a pretty big fan of the anime.
I will say I have my misgivings. I mean, I always do. You know, I'm always the Debbie Downer, I guess. I've kind of turned into that. But, I mean, this is the thing. I'm actually excited to watch it. I do want to see this. You know, the things that always seem to be able to be translated the most are things that work best low budget. And if you do high budget, well, the stakes are super high. Every time I find that, like, especially with the high budget, like, you know, high concept, sci-fi, you know, fantasy kind of stuff, people are a little bit more concerned about creative differences or artistic decisions that they make. You know, they're more like picky about those sort of things. The great thing about this is, like, at least from like I guess you would call like a cultural standpoint, or, you know, the way that it looks. I mean, Cowboy Bebop, it got really popular in the West because of how it felt like a Western story, you know, like a cowboy sort of Western. You know, you had your character Spike and, you know, Faye Valentine. You know, it feels very Western, you know. I think has always been attributed to kind of why it was so well accepted originally in the West. It was so big. And the dub is one of the most famous dubs for being as good, if not, some people would argue, better than the original animation. So, you know, having that said, you know, this could very easily well translate as well to a Western audience. And a lot of people, Western audience, are very familiar with it. John Cho is a really great actor, really familiar actor. I don't really know too much about the other two, but I think that, I think it could be pretty good. I have a little misgivings about like looking at the set photos and all that. Hopefully there is context that I'm missing maybe, but I don't know. What do you think about what you saw? Because you saw the photos on Twitter, right?
Yeah, I saw the photos. They were pretty much, they had to go accurate as far as, they had the looks of the characters. I think everyone wanted, if they had tried to really westernize the casting, people would have flipped, just like they do with all these other Netflix adaptations that they've done. But to me, I think the one thing, as I think about what I liked about the show, the anime, and then what I want to see from the live action, is the show had the incredible soundtrack, incredible animation. The pacing itself took its time as it went from scene to scene. And I don't know if that's how they're going to construct the show. I don't know if they're going to take long takes of them floating through space or a ship just flying. And that's part of the charm of the original anime. And I really,
the silence.
Yes.
There's very, very little dialogue. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know if that's how they're going to try to do this, if it's going to be a straight remake of what they did episode to episode, or if it's just going to try to do its own thing. So that's the only part that I am a little concerned with. I got to try to separate myself when I do watch this from the anime as much as possible and see if it does stand on its own without trying to compare it to the anime. But I think it's going to be difficult for people like us. I think it's almost inevitable that we will have the show in mind as we're watching this.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting for sure. I feel as though, I'm typically not very judgmental when it comes to anime adaptations. I'm not sure if I got an opportunity to talk to you on this podcast about my feelings about the different anime adaptations, but I know I've talked about it in my podcast, my late podcast, about kind of, my feelings on, what was adapted well, what wasn't, and all that kind of thing. But in general, I'm usually pretty positive about anime adaptations. Alita was great. That was a big budget one. Ghost in the Shell, another big budget one that was really great. On the low budget side, you have like the Rurouni Kenshin series. Actually, the last two movies were Netflix originals. There's a few other ones like Jinro, The Wolf Brigade. That's also really great on Netflix. One that a lot of people don't know that I recommend. More low budget. So, I'm generally pretty positive about it. So I think that it could definitely turn out well. I just think it depends on. I think if they treat their budget really well, like if they know when to spend it and when not to, I think it could do pretty good, in my opinion.
I'll go ahead and name drop your podcast, The Ronin Console. That's where you talked a lot about anime, and I'm glad to see that. Because often on Twitter, and I know you and I have talked about this before, and I expected the same takes, although this time it was a little different, which I thought was interesting. But a lot of anime fans immediately react to the negative based on, according to them, the track record of adaptations in the past.
AKA Dragon Ball Evolution. Like
that's their
only. Yeah, I mean, let's just be honest. Like, come on, you need to get past that. Like Japan makes like 50 million adaptations a year, and America makes, maybe one every once in a while, and it's either okay or it's great or it's maybe not that good. But I mean, Dragon Ball Evolution was that direct to DVD or
no? It came out in theaters.
It came out in theaters.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's funny. I mean, this is gonna be maybe a steaming take, but I watched a few clips from it, right? And it's not that bad. It really isn't. It really isn't. I know I'm gonna get good thing I'm not on social media anymore.
Right? Yeah. True.
But it really isn't. If you want to see some really, really bad adaptations, watch the Attack on Titan adaptation. That was really terrible. There is.
What about that Death Note one? Was that any good?
I never watched Death Note, so that one didn't kind of quite interest me. Watch a 2017 Terraform Mars adaptation. It's basically about cockroaches sent to Mars. They turn these big mutant, buff, Chad cockroaches, and then these genetically altered people with bug DNA go up there to stop them and everything. It's crazy. It's a great manga, and the anime is okay, but the movie adaptation is garbage. So people need to all I gotta say is do your research.
Well, no, you're absolutely right, because they always cite Dragon Ball Evolution, and then it's exactly like the movie or the video game movie adaptations, where it's like, how many more good movies that are adapted from video games do they need to make before people just are like, you can't say
are more neutral about
it. Yeah, exactly. The original Mortal Kombat I think is good, not the new one, but the original one I thought was good. The latest Tomb Raider was solid, and then we're talking about anime. Speed Racer is probably my favorite anime adaptation.
Alita Battle Angel is amazing.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's like, how many times do we have to keep citing these? It's almost like when you get into a film debate of like sequels are never as good. It's like are never as good as the original. It's like, are we talking Aliens? We're talking The Dark Knight for some people. So yeah, they're always going to immediately, I think, knee-jerk reaction against it. But hopefully it becomes a thing of the past. But I don't know if people are going to embrace this Cowboy Bebop one. Although online, this has been more positive from what I've seen.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that, maybe we should talk about some of the elephants in the room, like the fact how the main character's not white, which is, I think, a way that they're going to dodge a potential bullet with that one. Because if we're the other way around, I think that they could potentially pull a Ghost in the Shell situation, and that really will hurt the show, especially. Well, I don't know if it's low budget enough, maybe it won't hurt the show that much. But that's an interesting choice they made. Honestly, I don't really mind it too much. It doesn't make too much of a difference for me. But it'll be interesting if that does come up, because that's like a huge elephant in the room. The show couldn't possibly be more Western, in both its characters and and its themes and all that. Of course, it's sci-fi, so you can kind of take that as you may. But yeah, no, I'm definitely interested to see the reaction to it. Hopefully this starts a trend of people being able to trust, when an adaptation comes out. I think the biggest issue, especially with anime fans in the West, particularly, is that I think a lot of us still feel like we need anime to be represented properly, because like any small little, negative thing will completely affect how people in the West feel about anime, because we still feel like we're like a really hole in the wall, kind of like, a niche basically. And I honestly think that we couldn't be further from a niche. I think nowadays anime is pretty darn mainstream, and there's so much of it that like a lot of people can really consider themselves fans of anime nowadays. I think it's a lot less niche than I think we would like to believe. So I think a lot of this like very gatekeeping culture that we have with anime and adaptations is, I don't know, I think it's starting to not be justified as much as maybe it once was. But that's just me.
It could end up being the next thing in Hollywood. Like, it might be a little crazy to say now because we're in 2021,
game adaptations
but
too, maybe,
Yeah, well, the thing I've noticed is a lot of just from working at the shop, a lot of teen readers come in, they don't buy the comic books, they don't buy the trade paperbacks, and even though they're drowning in superhero media, they're going for manga. They're always coming in for manga. Mainly that's what they want to come in and read. They're buying manga anime merch. So I think that as that generation grows, probably in a decade, we'll start seeing some bigger budget and more often a Demon Slayer live action or something, and maybe that'll be like the next $1 billion property. It's not too crazy when you really think about what kids are into right now. It's, as you said, it is truly mainstream. And I did like that you brought up the casting choices as far as Spike, Jet, and Faye, because as you said, it's a Western show, but none of them are white cast. The Faye's Mexican American, and then the other two are obvious here. But when I think back on the anime, I don't think there was any. You had the jazz, the music, and all of that, but was there anything that tied the character specifically to a certain nationality?
Well, the name always is a giveaway, I mean, like, okay, so like let's go to, this is a great discussion, by the way. So Ghost in the Shell, right? So they went with Mira Killian, which was one of the personalities that in one of the versions of Ghost in the Shell, because there are multiple versions and she has multiple personalities because she's a brain, she's a ghost in a machine, so she changes bodies all the time. And Mira Killian was is one of the less popular of, Major Kusanagi. Makoto Kusanagi is the more popular one, right? So when people went in, they're like, oh, hey, this is Kusanagi, right? And they did this story. I mean, I think it's beyond spoilers now, so I would argue, like, okay, Kusanagi, if it was Kusanagi, yeah, like, okay, I can get your argument there, right? If it's Killian, well, okay, I can see where you could, differ on opinion there, right? Now, Spike Spiegel, how about Full Metal Alchemist, right? Edward Elric. Japan made a adaptation of Full Metal Alchemist, and they cast an all Japanese cast for a very, very European,
Mm.
like, series. If you're familiar with Full Metal Alchemist, they're all blonde haired, very, very European names. Ed Relwick, Alphonse, Elric, Winry. I mean, it couldn't be more European. So, I don't know. I think the great thing about the character Spike is that his character is just so because he's written so well, because he's so iconic, right? If you can nail those things, then I think most people will forgive it, regardless of how your opinion is, because the things that people care about him the most are not, his nationality,
Mm-hmm.
and they got the look down.
Yeah.
So the suit, it's great, and if he can pull off the martial arts, which is one of the coolest things about Spike, then man, like people are gonna just love that. People want to see a really cool character. So I think in this situation, they can really pull it off. And in general, I understand Netflix for their decision because it's really hard. Like, honestly, I would have been completely behind Netflix if they chose to go with a white lead, right? I would have been complete. And anyone who like smack talked it, I would have, of course, been like, no, you're wrong. Like, that doesn't have to be that way. But in this situation, I understand because this looks great. I'm super excited. I think it's gonna, could potentially do all the things that we wanted to do as a representation of the character and his innate traits, right? But they're also dodging a potential bullet there because I think there'd be more complaints, more scathing complaints if it were accused from the other direction.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So yeah, in general, I'm okay. I think it's fine.
I was going to say the audience definitely leans one way than the other, and you're right. I think Netflix did play it a lot safer on this, and it probably to their favor. That way they don't immediately sabotage the project before it hits later on this year. That's one thing that they did reveal. It is later on this year. I was not able to find a streaming date for it. But Netflix is also working on adaptations of several other animated series, including Avatar: The Last Airbender, which last year, I think, the original co-creators left that series. Now we've got One Piece coming up and Yu Yu Hakusho, along with apparently some other series as well. But those are the three big ones, aside from Cowboy Bebop now.
That'll be interesting. Yeah, back then when they announced that Avatar franchise, movie or series, I think it was a series, right? Not a movie, but like a series.
Yeah.
And then they left, and there was some controversy. Like that's gonna be interesting, But we'll see.
Yeah, especially now with the co-creators going back to Nickelodeon and they're doing more in the animated version of Avatar. So I think a lot of the fan base is just going to ignore the Netflix one and maybe just focus on the cartoon one. But yeah, we'll see how it all shakes out. You had mentioned Scarlett Johansson's anime adaptation. She's in the news right now again. And this is all in a summary from Deadline. Disney is moving the Black Widow Johansson case. And this is all going behind closed doors, and it's going for arbitration.
Getting Ray Fishered.
Yeah, it is. It is. The motion from Disney implies that Johansson did this to generate publicity. And Johansson's team, which it's like, why wouldn't they generate publicity? What are you talking about?
Right.
Johansson's team responded with, quote, after initially responding to this litigation with a misogynistic attack against Scarlett Johansson, Disney is now predictably trying to hide its misconduct in a confidential arbitration. Why is Disney so afraid of litigating this case in public? End quote.
Whoa. Hold up. Wait. So wait. Where's this whole misogynistic thing? Did I miss something?
So they're just bringing that up as, I don't know. I've read that Disney quote, and it was simply them saying that she wanted to. It was something like, of course, sensationalize it, is I believe the verbiage they used, but that doesn't equate to male or female, in my opinion. So I think that's just the team trying to get people, trying to get headlines. They're doing their job, I think. And
so Disney is basically, what is Disney claiming? Disney is claiming that
she got paid.
Is making a misogynistic.
No,
is doing something.
No,
or
this is
Scarlet is?
Scarlett's team saying that Disney's being
Ah,
misogynistic by saying that Scarlett's trying to sensationalize this, implying that they would have handled it differently had it been maybe a
ah,
male co-star or something. And so
wow.
that's kind of
Okay,
what they're saying. And
juicy.
yeah, and it's one of those things where I'm like, get your money. You're already. We know she's not going to have any more projects, at least in the future in the
Right, right.
MCU. It looks like, and we this isn't the only case like this where
Sure.
streaming services affected supposedly box office returns, and then in turn, actors weren't paid as much as they felt they should
Right.
have. And Disney, with them bragging about the $60 million that they had made in Disney Plus subscriptions from this thing,
Hmm.
and then saying that, well, she got paid this much, so she got hers anyway. And
Hmm.
so it seems like something in the contract did not add up. And I think that a lot of these companies are going to start being a lot more careful with, okay, you're going to make this much of the box office. However, if there's a shutdown or if the movie doesn't come out in theaters, you will get this default of whatever million or thousands.
Right.
So I think that this will go in favor of Scarlett, and this is probably why Disney's going behind closed doors,
Sure.
because they know that they're probably going to have to pay up.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in general, whenever there's a situation like this, and you have basically, the big guy versus the small guy, I typically am a little bit more sympathetic to the small guy, even if maybe it's not legitimate, it just kind of, that's kind of, it's kind of the way that I kind of operate. But in general, I mean, we do know that Disney has a propensity to always push everything to the very legal limit, and that's, I mean, I imagine most companies would
Mhm.
or do and or would if they could. I guess Disney just knows how to do it, and they do it very well, and they control the narrative after the fact very well. And in general, I have a distaste toward their actions. So when I hear something like that, it's like, and these actors, like, they're in it for the job, they're in it for the money. A lot of them don't have a lot of creative control in what they do, what they, they're the actors, the directors. So if one of them wants to say, hey, I signed up for, X, Y, and Z, black on white, then they have every right to do so. I mean, it's not a passion project, like they're doing it for the job. So
Right, right. I hope she gets paid, and I think she will. And I don't know. I'm still afraid of for the younger actors that are replacing people like Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson that are probably getting
younger.
shittier.
They're pretty young already, but yeah.
Like, they're getting shittier contracts probably
Oh yeah.
compared to what they're. And even Lord Feige had talked about how they don't want to do long-term contracts anymore. They want to do short-term ones. So that's
Mm.
I don't know if that has to do with. From what I understand, he said that after the Black Widow movie came out, and what people kind of drew from that is they were kind of not forced, but they had to make the Black Widow movie at some point, and because of that long-term contract, they said, okay, you get X amount of films, and she had one left on the contract. And instead of paying it out, they're
Mhm.
like, let's do this Black Widow movie that is in your contract. So they probably want to
Remember when
avoid that kind of
Fox and
thing.
Sony got accused of doing that, but then everyone jumped on them because they made movies because they had to, because like the contract would go back to Disney.
Right? Yes.
It's like, wait, where's that energy?
Right, exactly. No, they all happily paid $30 on Disney Plus for what they're calling Bland Widow. So I don't know. I didn't see it, but
Bland Middo.
Middow, is that what it is?
Oh goodness.
Well, speaking of which, last Sunday, the Spider-Man No Way It's Cinema trailer leaked online. Sony and Disney very quickly shut down several uploads with copyright strikes, and then they released it officially the very next day. It ended up getting millions of views. Even the Warner Brothers Italy Twitter page reposted the fucking trailer, which I thought was really bizarre and came out of fucking nowhere. And
Mhm.
immediately we called them out for like, yeah, you're not promoting the Snyder Cut, but you're promoting the fucking MCU. What the fuck kind of world are we in? So I thought it was funny that it leaked. It had like pre-visuals on it still. There was nothing on there. I didn't watch the whole thing. It was so blurry.
Right.
And I didn't watch the official thing because I don't care. I'm not seeing the movie. But you did see it. Did you have any thoughts on that third movie?
I didn't watch the first or second movie. I watched the trailer for the first, And second movie, I believe somehow, you can't really. I mean, if you go to the theater, you definitely can't avoid new trailers. Like you will watch a new trailer. This time, I legitimately just said, well, what happened was I saw, I logged on to Twitter and saw someone on there that I know saying something about Andrew Garfield trending, right? So then I went to the trending tag. I saw Andrew Garfield like number one, and I'm like, oh my god, like how could he be number one on the day that this trailer leaked, or has been posted? Like obviously he's got to be in there, and if they actually do that, and it's just Sony, and maybe they're doing something crazy, we'll see. So I watched the trailer, and he wasn't there. But I mean, can we? Well, it's not the trailer. It's not spoilers. I'm always afraid of spoiling people. But Doctor Octopus from number 2, Spider-Man 2 was on there. That was kind of cool. Hey, I'm familiar. That's the MCU though. It's like, hey, I recognize that. I get
Right.
that reference. That's literally the MCU. So I saw him. Like, hey, that's cool. I like him. But everything else, I didn't care for. I mean, unsurprisingly, it's the third movie of a franchise that I couldn't care less, about. So, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see if they end up integrating Andrew in there somehow. Depending on how bad the movie looks, if it's not as bad as it looks, then maybe I'll. I don't know.
I don't want a Disney-fied Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. I don't want a Disney-fied Tobey Maguire. I don't want a Disney-fied Doc Ock, which is what we're getting.
Hey, one thing. So I know we didn't. It's not in the notes, but one thing we should talk about maybe is that Star Wars anime thing. Did you end up talking about that?
I didn't talk about it. I didn't see the trailer. I saw like the little GIFs that people were making, but I'm so like Star Wars, I can take it or leave it. I don't dislike it.
Same,
but I don't have to go.
I just wanted to make sure we were all in agreement on that, because I'm not touching. But yeah, okay. Just wanted to throw that out there real quick.
Yeah, the funny thing about this trailer here, and my coworker, she means well. She doesn't know where I fully stand on the MCU and everything, but she did the same thing that a lot of MCU fans do when they come across someone that is like, that's not my cup of tea, that's not my thing, I'm good, I'll pass. They can't leave it alone. They can't, in their mind, they can't comprehend someone that's not into the. What do you mean? Why? And right. So sure enough, she's like, but what if Tobey Maguire's in there and he's really cool. I'm like, I really don't care. I'm not going to see it. Yeah, but I know you like the Andrew Garfield. I'm like, yeah, but I don't want it under Disney's handling. But what about the green? I'm like, look, I don't care. I legitimately do not care. Our other coworker is going to be in 2 hours. He watched the trailer. He's a Spider-Man fan. You can talk to him about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's that it's funny. And I'm sure a lot of our viewers, recognize they're pretty. This is pretty tame to our viewers because they know what we're all about. But but it's funny because it's like, the MCU is such a omnipresent, thing that you are making a statement when you say you don't care about it. Like you can't help it. Like by saying I'm not interested, or I don't care, or I didn't watch it. Like it's such a large, ever-present, ubiquitous thing that by saying you didn't watch Endgame, that's more of a statement than saying you watched it.
I guess so. Yeah.
So even though we don't want to make a statement, it is. I really wish I could just be a not MCU fan in peace. But whenever anyone says, like, hey, did you watch it? I'm like, oh, I don't really like it that much. It's like, oh, why are you so immature? Why are you avoiding it? It's like you're paying in like emotional labor by not watching it or something. It's weird. Because like, hey, I have the decision as a consumer to not buy something, right? And it's like, well, that applies to the MCU. Now, fortunately, some people out there just don't know about the MCU at all, and they don't watch any of the comic book stuff, so they're usually not criticized. But if I say I didn't watch, Civil War, but I did watch Batman v Superman, it's like, oh, this guy's a shill. This guy's a DC shill or something. But yeah, we're all familiar with this, aren't we?
Yeah, all too familiar for many years, many, and it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. It continues. It's a little frustrating, but I did think it was funny that it leaked online. And you know what? If you want to go see it, Brocat on the other side, have fun. We're not telling you. That's the thing. People think that by us not watching it, we expect others. And it's like, I don't care. Like, go see it. I don't give a shit. But I don't want to see it. And I don't want to hear about it. I'm not going to discuss it.
Yeah.
It's I had a coworker that would he couldn't catch the latest MCU. He was into the MCU, but he couldn't catch the movies as quickly as everyone else on Thursday
Sure.
nights. So on Fridays when he had to work in the mornings, they'd be like, "Oh, did you see Guardians of the Galaxy?" Instead of he learned this lesson of, "No, I haven't seen it," and then they'd go into it, and then he would have the whole thing spoiled for him. He changed it, and it worked. It was, and maybe I don't know, I can't do it, but he would go, "Yeah, it was very good. Your total's 1064," and that would kill it like immediately for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Just yeah, it was
Right.
awesome. 1064. Well, let's talk about some Feige stuff here with an interview with comicbook.com when Lord Feige was asked about James Gunn's Pedal Gunn's previous comments on a Disney Warner Brothers superhero crossover. It's suddenly changing now. He said, quote, "Well, look, my standard answer to things are never say never. I never thought we'd get this far," end quote. And it seems like there's a little bit of a trend here. First, Gunn is talking about how he had supposedly pitched a crossover between DC and Marvel, and there's been a lot of rumors. Film Gob recently talked about that as well, and how Zach and all of them were kicked out essentially so that they can sell this over to Disney, kind of like they did with Sony and Spider-Man and all those. And it seems like what they used to call tinfoil hat speculation is suddenly becoming a lot more frightening realistic than we once thought.
Yeah, my thoughts on that are this. There was a time above. No, I'm joking.
That's true though.
there was a time where I held like a very principled view on DC Comics because I was young and didn't understand the realities of this world. But all joking aside, everything that we've seen so far from DC has been to become more populous, more kitsch, more like what Marvel has been able to do. And we've talked about this on the podcast a few times. Actually, I think last time I was on the podcast, we talked about this a little bit. It doesn't really seem very far-fetched. I think from anyone's point of view, whether you like the MCU or not, whether you like DC or not, that DC would want to do that. There was a time where, people, MCU fans were like, what was the argument that they used to make against DC? If it wasn't like, oh, Zack Snyder's a hack, it was, oh, DC just trying to be like Marvel, but they're never going to catch up, right? That was always the argument, right? Well, I think that's true. Before I would always like, no, DC's doing something different. They're all about creative control or creative, freedom. I meant, and Burton and Nolan and Snyder. They're about real artistic, blah 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 blah, right? And I was wrong.
Today of course.
Yeah, I was.
At
was
one
wrong.
time they were, but no more.
So yeah, I have to say that you MCU fans were right. And I think that the logical conclusion of your previous statements are coming to fruition as we speak.
It's one of those things where when and if that happens, and I think a lot of us are on the same boat of, especially with the Ayer cut, which we will discuss a little bit when we get to DC FanDome, but and I've seen this sentiment with a lot of us in the movement of, we kind of understand that, if Restore the Snyderverse happens, we'd get Justice League 2 and 3, maybe the Batfleck movie, but we kind of get that that's going to be it. And the Ayer cut is another thing of like, well, let me just get another taste of cinema, right? Of them trying to do trying to elevate superhero movies as opposed to, just fitting the cookie cutter mold of, let's try to make as much money as possible. So even if this were to happen where they eventually did a crossover or sold off some film rights to the mouse, it's to the point now where I really don't care, because it's no longer what we signed up for. It's no longer what most of their movies now are like the Hamadaverse or the MCU. That's at least in this current iteration. If you want to count the Burtonverse and Nolan's, and maybe that's a different story. But as of this direction right now, it's kind of like, well, I could not care less. It's all right, great, have it. I'm not watching Aquaman 2. I'm not seeing the Pattinson movie. I'm not. It doesn't matter to me.
Right.
So if it happens, this is what they wanted, I guess.
I've gone through something of a bell curve myself where, in the beginning I was like, DC and Marvel are completely different, and that's what makes things great, And then I went through like, I guess I'm kind of now in the, in the top of that where it's like, they're all the same. But then I thought about it again, and I'm like, well, you know what? I believe in supply and demand, and I think that if they do want to go with this extreme, kind of everything is in the same universe, Marvel or DC, they can all cross over. They're all very similar in different ways, and they approach, superheroes very, very similarly. I think people are going to start to become, very just like whatever, and then, there will be something that triggers people's interest, whether it's superheroes or whatever, honestly, I don't know. I mean, I got into superheroes because, I thought they were cool, but also because I felt like they were iconic, and because they were iconic, I could talk to like my friends about them, and I saw them in different places, and I kind of worshipped them in a way. I think that's a lot of people's relationship with superheroes. I think in general, I mean, across the entire board, and you probably know this, especially if someone owning a comic book shop and, being so into the nerd culture, that I think superheroes have lost a lot of their luster just in general, and that people don't view them as like this Greek myth that, this religious symbol as they once did. So I think that, all of this is kind of just this ubiquity that we're seeing is just kind of pushing that forward. And I think eventually it's going to reach ahead, and something else is going to, and it's going to have to. Of course, the argument that there would be like some kind of superhero fatigue has been kind of floating around, but I don't know. I think that there's a legitimate, I can really see it now, in my opinion. I can really see that eventually happening. I don't think it will happen really soon. This stuff is always slow.
Yeah.
And maybe something will happen that will just completely shatter it and just make it happen right away. But, I trust that it will eventually happen.
I think so too. And even from talking to MCU fans, they've been like, after Endgame, I'm kind of like, all right, that's it. Especially since a lot of these actors are not coming back to these roles, and they're instead trying to establish these other ones. And kind of like they did with the Marvel Universe and the comics, with all new, all different. And that line completely failed. And now I'm seeing those characters now, like Falcon, Captain America, and coming as like his own movie. And I'm like, I remember that comic bombed. Like all of those things bombed.
Yeah.
So it'll be. I want to see if that same thing happens here with their movies, and as soon as the MCU starts to not make as much money as Disney wants, that's when they'll start really cutting its legs, and I think we'll see the end of all of that. We did get a couple of tweet reactions here on this Feige news and this quote. First one on Twitter came from @OKItWadkar, who said, quote, "This is pure and utter shit and only possible in Hamadaverse," end quote. I agree. I think they're more than willing.
Possibilities.
Yeah. And a very short tweet here from @Prime_76, who said, quote, "It won't happen," end quote.
He's an optimist.
Yep. Yeah, it sounds like it.
Optimist Prime.
Absolutely. And we were talking about comic books a little bit, and how even the comic market, I think, is, I'm seeing it suffer, where our DC ordering isn't as high. The stories are not as interesting or engaging. It's kind of hard to choose, like, you had Batman White Knight, which did really well, and Dark Knight's Metal to an extent, but they're kind of lacking a lot of that talent now, with people like Scott Snyder moving on to Image Comics. Peter J. Tomasi is no longer doing Detective Comics. They're treating the DC books like Disney has been treating the Marvel books for several years, in which they're going with the cheaper talent, and they're trying to raise the profit margins as much as possible. And because of that, the stories and the artwork are both suffering. And now we're seeing it on the DC side, unfortunately. And another thing that's going to hurt it is that DC has informed retailers that 27 titles in September and October will be affected by COVID port closures. Many of its books during those months will receive delays, and they did also say that it expects more title delays in the coming months. And I don't think DC will be the only one affected. I would not be surprised if we started seeing this across all lines. And it just goes to show that the COVID pandemic continues to affect every line of business, and comic books, comic shops, all of that is it's going to be a struggle these next 2 months to kind of relay that message to people that aren't as as plugged in to these things where people are coming in for their Wednesday comics, and it's like, all right, here's 2 from your pile
Right.
of 20 that you normally get. So that's gonna suck, and I hate that it truly is now at a point where we're getting book delays after the pandemic openings. And I guess it could have been worse. I could be grateful for the fact that we've gotten these weeks, but it has truly been a struggle with these different distributors to try to even order titles. It kind of
Right.
sucks.
Yeah, no, it definitely sucks. Yeah, that's pretty much the beginning and the end of that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, not much to say there. But we do have more DC news, and I kind of wanted to get your take on this, and we've gotten some of that sentiment, I think, from both of us. But DC FanDome's 1-year anniversary took place last week. This is where AT&T did a digital convention, and we got the Snyder Cut trailer. They announced Black Adam. They showed the Batman trailer as well. And it was, I think, a pretty big success for both sides. People that are interested in the newer movies, and some of us that wanted the Snyder Cut, and that was a pretty big deal for a lot of us. But with 2021's coming up in October 16th, are you at all excited for that? Will you be tuning in? Would there be anything that they announce ahead of time, like check out this trailer, that would make you go, okay, let me check this out?
No. I mean, this is the thing, right? And I've had to think about this a lot, but there was a time where I was like really active in promoting the movement, be it the Snyder Cut and all of its offshoots, and just the general sentiment about creative integrity, A over E, and all that tangential stuff, right? I thought about it and I'm like, well, is it my responsibility? Like there comes a point where it's like, okay, I really want to do this, but then it's like, well, should I have to do this? Because it's a toll, I
Yep.
mean, I think people might kind of scoff at it, like, oh, it's a little Twitter, movement or whatever. It's no big, but it takes a lot of our time and a lot of our energy. And I genuinely am emotionally invested in this. And I've gotten into arguments. I've gotten into fallouts with people about it. People that I respect. Yeah, I mean, I'm getting a little deep here, but it's serious. Like I really care about this stuff. And so much so that it just wore me out. And I'm like, well, you know what? If Warner Brothers isn't willing to meet me at least halfway, on this, like if they release like an air cut trailer, heck yeah, I'll be there, because hey, that's at least halfway or more. But if I have to, be like picketing up to the very like last minute just to get them to like flinch their eye or like even bat an eye, then it's like, okay, well, no, I'm done with that. So yeah, it sounds kind of defeatist almost, but I've spent a lot of time with this, I have.
Yeah. Now I respect that a lot, and I think you're absolutely right. People, unless you have been or had been tweeting or pushing or setting up events or even participating in an event, posting up on a regular basis, you do see, and for some of us for many years, it does wear one down. It does kind of like, all right, let's do this again. All right, now let's do this again. And it's just, it is a mentally, emotionally draining thing to do over months and years, especially when there's no results. Like the period before we got any, where it was almost like pitch black, like Zach was just like, I mean, I guess keep going, but it wasn't like
right.
Like, oh, here's a little snippet of this also. And there was a period where it's like, I think this is it. It does suck. And it's not something that is fun in any way, I don't think. I don't think the fun starts until a trailer drops or until a confirmation happens, and that's when it's like, okay, that's when you can breathe and take a
when
break.
the fun starts, and let me be honest about this too. When the creators have an involvement, back when we were the hypists, the actors, Zach, Ayer, all the people involved, they were the ones igniting the interest and keeping it going. I think that's something that often gets overlooked. Like we kind of were fed and like fueled by the little snippets. Remember when we were getting like those black and white, screenshots like every other day?
Yes.
It's like, it's that kind of stuff that really was the fuel. And we had people to kind of hone it and organize it and fan it and keep it going. And then we had all of us, who were there. Of course, we were the the sticks there, to burn. I mean, that sounds kind of negative, but it's not. Trust me. But and I think that we don't have that anymore. Zach isn't really interested in doing that kind of thing, and he's also not interested in snuffing us out either, which is in a way kind of cruel because I wish he would just snuff it out, like if he, like. So I think we all have to make our own decision. Zach has left us with the power to choose what we want to do, but he hasn't really encouraged us too much anymore either. So that's kind of the state of the situation.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's a product of, he has these projects now lined up for the next year or two. And maybe he's like, okay, well, I'm definitely busy with Netflix. And then maybe after that, there's something we don't know. And the last thing we heard was, let's see what happens with Discovery. And that's still a year away. So I think it could be a product of that. And I think if there truly was no chance that, I like to think that Zach would say, okay, stop. I'm not going to do any more. But I don't know. I think it's, that's my optimistic part right there of like, if he truly doesn't want to, I think he would tell us at this point. So, but yeah, no, I definitely can see the fatigue and I totally understand it. And I'm seeing it here with DC FanDome where I have no interest in this, even from the comic side. It's like, what am I going to get out of this from, they just announced the Dark Knights of Steel maxi series. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like I'm kind of excited for that, but there's nothing crazy, nothing that's really out there that's really pushing all of this. And that includes the movies. The one movie that I was kind of like, part of me is like, I wish I weren't boycotting this a tiny bit is Black Adam because I really like The Rock and especially after the Fast and Furious movies that I went through and watched. But now I'm like, no, but I don't like it enough to where I'm like, okay, I want to tune in and I'm going to go see that movie. I'm fine with just never seeing those things and that's okay. So that's what's going to happen this year. And it's another case of Warner Brothers not seeing, even though we send them millions of signals all the time of you can make a shit ton of money if you give us Justice League 2 and 3 or the Batfleck movie or even the Ayer cut, as easy as the Ayer cut. And they like drag their feet at it because there's a lot of egos involved and there's a lot of these people that are in charge that truly don't want to be a part of this and don't want these things. And it will take something like Discovery to go, hey, why aren't we making money over here? Let's go ahead and do that. And that's if that happens. So I don't think it's going to happen at FanDome. If we get anything, it'll be the Ayer cut, maybe a trailer. But I think that's really it. And outside of that, I'm not going to tune in unless they do announce an Ayer cut or Zach is on a panel or something. But so far, they're not announcing any of those things. And we did get some reactions here from Twitter. I did put it out there. And it seems like it's pretty much unanimous. At Raverin said, quote, I will not be tuning into this year's DC FanDome because Warner Brothers Pictures has made it abundantly clear they have no interest in the Snyderverse and their new stuff is trash. Hashtag release the Ayer cut. End quote. Another one here from at Balian Star, quote, nope, unless the David Ayer's Suicide Squad is announced before, what's the point? Hashtag release the Ayer cut. End quote. Another one here from at DigiGodGamer1 who says, quote, for what? To hear about Peacemaker after the Suicide Squad bombed in the box office? I'm good, LOL, end quote. Yeah, they're really trying to shovel that shit in our face and stuff that's not successful. And another one from at My Overdrive Mind, quote, absolutely not. Warner Brothers' complete disregard for their fan base and treatment of their employees is all the reason I need to lose interest, let alone the shallow Hamadaverse, end quote. Couple more here from at Cut Hamad said, quote, I am tired of being angry at the incompetence from Warner Brothers. I am going to avoid DC FanDome in the interest of my own health and well-being, end quote. It's kind of what you were saying.
Yeah. Hamad's good guy.
He is.
Don't be angry, man. Don't be angry. Be happy.
Final one here is at CRTLNDT said, quote, unless the Ayer cut is announced before FanDome, I won't be tuning in, end quote. And there were many more comments on here and on Facebook, all pretty much saying the same thing. Nope, no point. And from the Snyderverse crowd, there were some groups that are just generic DC that are like, yeah, I'm excited for the Batman. It's a great, you enjoy. But I think for people like us, this is kind of it until they announce the Ayer cut or this regime ends and they do a whole new slate of films in the future, and maybe I'll revisit whatever new things they have at that point. But otherwise, yeah, I think we're pretty much done with FanDome, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was the last one.
Even if it's not, it's like I'm not really too worried about the fandom. I'm not really too worried about Warner Bros., DC, or the brand or its or anything like that as a whole. All I care about is my interest. I think that's what everyone I think in the end really only cares about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, even if it does do well and it's not terrible and it doesn't bomb like I hope it does, then you know what? Oh well.
Yeah.
you know?
But that does round out our bit of news for this week. We do have this month's What's New on Netflix, the September 2021 highlights. And it wasn't a super hefty list. I know last month there
Clearly
were...
not by our first contender here.
Well, I did want to talk about Mark Strong's Sinestro from Green Lantern in 2011. This one was what should have been the first big hint at maybe Jeff Johns should stay in comics, and the 2011 Green Lantern will be on there. Ryan Reynolds, who has been really upheld and embraced by the movement, especially lately with Free Guy. A lot of people bought tickets to go see that. Now it's getting a sequel. But do you have any interest at all in revisiting 2011's Green Lantern, even for Mark Strong's performance?
Actually, you know what? I do. And while I joke about it, I don't really have a lot of negative memories about that movie, aside from the fact that they didn't. I mean, the most basic thing about the Green Lantern, I don't know what you call that arc, but basically like his, induction all the way up until he fights Parallax, which is supposed to be like the end game of Green Lantern villains, right? Speaking of the first movie, which is in fact like as a fully realized villain that comes into play and then is defeated by the end of the movie, is unfathomable. I mean, they basically did the whole thing that was popular at the time where they make the villain this kind of cloud or some sort of like, idea that's like kind of omnipresent, and they have to, suck it into something or blow it up or, like it's not really like a personality much. And I'm not saying that can't be done well, but it was never done well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, but I liked Mark Strong in that movie. I liked Ryan Reynolds in that movie. I thought he was a good choice in casting. And the CG was actually pretty sick for back in 2011. I thought the suit looked fine. It's funny, Ryan Reynolds always jokes about the suit, but I thought the suit was cool, in my opinion. I like how they realized the suit. It wasn't like, they could have done the classic, skin tight, latex or whatever, but they didn't. They like really had like these interesting, like kind of musculature designs with the glowing elements and all that. I just really hate how they played off Parallax in the end, which I was, that was just really, and then he punched him like with the big fist. I mean, like,
right.
come on. That was really, really disappointing.
I'm going to go back and check it out again, watch it. We play it at the shop every so often when it was on HBO Max. And it's like, all right, I'd catch little parts here or there. You're right. The CG was pretty solid. And I liked Mark Strong's Sinestro. That seems to be the one thing that everyone's like, his Sinestro was great. And we never got the Sinestro Corps War, which is unfortunate, but it's, it is what it is. And I don't know if I think they're doing that Green Lantern show on HBO Max, and Sinestro's supposed to be in that. And I don't know. I'm not interested in that one, but it'll be, if anything, for people to kind of go back and check out again, just to kind of revisit.
At least in my opinion, at least that movie was bad because they just didn't do it right. At least it wasn't like bad because there was like a mandate, or it wasn't bad because they were trying to copy someone else. It wasn't bad because from my impression, and maybe my memory, maybe I'm not remembering it the way that it actually was. Maybe my glasses are rose colored, or I'm ignorant to the fact of what really happened. But from what I remember and from what I understand is that movie, it was rewritten a few times, which, isn't uncommon. There's a lot of movies that get rewritten a lot that were great in the end. But in general, the reason why they were bad are because the people who were associated with the movie were bad. It wasn't like, this kind of like factory created, manufactured, scenario. It was like, they made the movie the way that they thought it was going to catch on, and it didn't hit. I don't know. What's your opinion on that?
The only thing I've read from the director, who was asked recently if he'd ever do another superhero film.
Who directed that?
I don't remember his name, but he said that he would never do another superhero film because of Green Lantern, and the only thing he said about it was that the experience making it was terrible, and I believe he said that there were too many fingers in the pie is like the analogy he used, which we don't know what that means really.
Well, studio interference probably.
More than likely. So yeah.
Back in 2011. That's interesting. I mean, studio interference is nothing new, but it wasn't like, man, if we don't make $1 million, if we're not in the million or the, it's not $1 million, $1 billion. If we're not in the $1 billion club, then, or no, million, no, yeah, definitely million. If we're not, if we're not in the MCU club, then we're gonna be considered a failure by journalists and whatnot. Like that wasn't really a thing back in 2011. So I'm definitely, it'd be great to kind of go back and see like what was the impetus for what happened in that particular scenario. Nowadays, it's like, if we don't make it as much as a similarly budgeted MCU movie, then we're going to be a failure automatic.
Maybe we'll know the full story one day if the director even wants to dive back into what really happened in Green Lantern. One of the most successful TV properties for DC is Lucifer Season 6, which is the final season. That one is hitting Netflix. It's so successful that the showrunner, Joe Henderson, wrote some comics in the past, is now doing the Pokemon live action Netflix adaptation, and that'll probably be another huge property for Netflix. But it's amazing how Lucifer Season 6, the show that was going to get canceled after Season 2 or 3, I think, and now Netflix took it, and it's one of their most successful shows. It's pretty amazing, and I got to applaud them. It's not one that I kept up with, but Kelly, the previous host of this podcast, she's watched every episode, and she's excited to see this to the end.
So the director also directed the Pokemon series?
The showrunner is going to do the new Netflix Pokemon series, live action series that they're going to be coming out with in the next couple of years. Joe Henderson, yeah.
Interesting. I wonder if Netflix has a pool of like people that they kind of, they kind of like, and they typically get projects. Because like, you do Lucifer, and they're like, oh, you know what? I think I'll do it in anime, like like Pokemon. It's like.
I was almost thinking that Netflix handed it to him like, we want you to do Pokemon, this white hot property. Everyone loves Pokemon right now, and you did one of our most successful things ever, which is Lucifer. So you take this huge property, and now let's see what you can do with this thing. Can you make us even more subs or whatever? However they measure these things with views more.
It's the J.J. Abrams effect,
Right, I guess so. But speaking of Pokemon, the series Master Journey will be hitting Netflix as well. They have an exclusive contract with the Pokemon company to stream them, at least here in North America. And that next series will be on there. And I'm really behind on my Pokemon. I don't know if you're big on Pokemon, but I started watching Sun and Moon, which I enjoyed.
Digimon.
Yeah, a little different, right? Did you ever catch that movie or that special where the old Digidestin come back and they're much older?
No, I didn't. I watched the first 3 seasons of Digimon, and that was pretty much it. And I never really kept up with it after that. I believe it was the one where the people turned into the Digimon. They would like merge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't great, but.
The last one on this list, which I hope is better than the other He-Man thing that hit Netflix, is He-Man and the Masters of the Universe Season 1. This is aimed at a much younger audience. I watched the trailer. It is definitely a more futuristic take on He-Man, but...
is this the Kevin Smith thing?
No, that's the one that I could not... I mean, I got through half of episode 3, and I'm like, I'm done with this. And I'm not even an old school He-Man guy, so I'm not one of those that's like...
I really did like the original He-Man.
You did or you didn't?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
That, Thundercats, and I mean, also some of the, I love that stuff. 80s and 80s. That was the 80s, right? Or was that was maybe a little earlier?
Late 70s.
Late 70s, early. Yeah. The whole generation was great. Yeah.
Did you watch the Kevin Smith Masters of the Universe?
I didn't even consider it. I mean, before it came out, I was kind of like, it was kind of sus to me. Some people like see Kevin Smith attached to something, they're like all about it. But my view on Kevin Smith is that I don't have a view. It's like, I don't. What he did Mallrats, and he did that thing for A24 and all these weird stuff. I don't follow him around, so I don't get the appeal really. But
I think he's just a great speaker. He does all of these podcasts, and he made those convention appearances. He knows how to speak, and he knows how to get people to listen to his
He's
stories.
pretty fan friendly too. He's not like
Exactly.
he seems like he's not constantly going on the offense to the fans,
No.
and he feels like a fan himself. He's one of the few creators who also feels just like a fan, which probably is very refreshing to a lot of people.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt that on his podcasts he'll immediately side with the guest on everything, even if like I'm like last week though you were talking about this, you were shitting on that. So
Yeah.
that probably helps him kind of keep everyone happy and keep guests happy. So, but
Hmm.
yeah, Masters of the Universe, it just wasn't a well-written show, and the animation was great, which is the thing that's kind of a shame. But I kind of want to watch this different take on He-Man. It does focus on He-Man.
Is it
And
new or just like a syndicated kind of thing? Or
it's brand new. It is a
oh,
Netflix
brand new.
original. Yep.
Wow. So Netflix has really got a hard on for He-Man.
Apparently, yeah. And so they're going to have this, which is aimed at kids, and then Masters of the Universe was aimed at an older audience.
He-Man Go.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, it's not quite that. I like Teen Titans Go, but it's not quite to that level. It's kind of like more like all right, they transform. They kind of like almost this Power Rangers-y type of thing going.
Yeah.
So it's definitely aimed at kids, and I'm curious about it. But yeah, not a whole lot crazy on Netflix, but there's a good amount of originals, stuff that I will be checking out. But let's head into the final part of today's episode, and this is the more personal side where you get to know Millennial Mike and myself a little bit better, where we talk about what's been going on in our week, or what have we been playing or reading or watching. Let's head into the Brocat block.
So I got to watch Green Knight, that new A24 key that came out with, what's that guy's name? That handsome devil with the hair.
That's a lot of people.
But yeah, no, I really enjoyed that film quite a bit. A24 is constantly smashing out of the park. They're one of the few big developers that are producers that are doing kind of the mainstream, I guess you would say, kind of indie projects, which is really cool. So I definitely recommend checking that out. A lot of anime recently. I recently kind of went on this Gantz binge. I'm not sure if you know what Gantz is.
I've heard of it, yeah.
Right. So I started off actually watching the live action adaptations, which are actually totally okay, by the way. And then I watched the original animation, which was 100% terrible. Early 2000s, late 90s Gonzo 3D animation was just pure garbage. But what else have I done? So mostly anime binge. Gantz has been a big thing. So yeah, just kind of laying low, kind of chilling. You can always catch me on on some new anime. So
yeah, there's been some stuff that has popped up on Netflix, on HBO Max. I was watching a lot of Haikyuu, and then I fell off of it. But I was enjoying it, but I was just kind of like, okay, I get what this is, and I'm kind of over it now. Like I'm not as attached to the characters to where I got to see what happens next. But I did enjoy it for it being a volleyball anime. And the other, I fell off of Jujutsu Kaisen.
Oh, you fell really? See, I haven't watched it, but they just came out with a movie, and in general, like the whole franchise has just been popping.
Yes,
it's just been really, really popping. So everyone's only saying positive things about it. So I'm actually really surprised that you're kind of you're a little bit lukewarm on it, huh?
It wasn't my jam. Yeah, it wasn't my thing. And it's I sell the hell out of the manga, just like Demon Slayer and My Hero. Any manga that I can get in seems to sell, but. I got to episode 5, I think, and and I don't know, I just have a hard time relating to a lot of these, and maybe it's because and it's not the case with Jujutsu, but with modern anime, it's always this guy like, oh, I'm not good enough, oh, I have no friends, and I'm like, I remember anime in the 80s.
He actually does, though. Right?
Yeah, he's got the power friendship.
He does. Like, he constantly complains about not having friends, but then when he's in a pinch, he has all these people, and he's always constantly, and unintentionally, of course, inspiring people around him who then kind of follow him around, and then he has this huge group of friends, and who all lend him his power, and then when he's at his lowest, he gets Nakama power. Everyone's like, "We believe in you," and then he just bursts into this like godlike fury and destroys the enemy.
Yes.
No, I'm quite familiar with that.
Yeah, no, and I was telling Kelly about this, where in in the early 90s and late 80s, the protagonist was usually an asshole, like kind of a bully sometimes. And I don't know why.
Right.
And I don't know if they changed it because it relates more to the readerships or the viewers, where they're like, well, let's make someone that they can relate more to, this guy that's an outcast or whatever. And so I don't know. Maybe that's my thing where I just can't, like in Haikyuu, the same thing. The guy's really short, but he just really wants to play volleyball. So he taught himself how to jump really high. So he's able to. So it's kind of the same thing. But I will say I started watching Food Wars as well, which I'm like, oh shit, I can't watch this around Leo or anything. Like it's kind of it's a little crazy.
Okay. I never really saw you as like kind of like a Food Wars kind of guy, but that's cool.
I saw the first episode and I'm like, this is kind of funny. So to me, and it's the
I've
same
seen
reason.
Some clips from the foodgasms are they're pretty wild.
They are. Where even I'm like, oh, I'm kind of uncomfortable sitting here watching this thing, and I know it's just food, but
this is all Netflix. Like, do you use Crunchyroll or you know what we forgot to talk about? The deal is officially gone through that Crunchyroll is officially getting purchased, and the deal is going through with by Funimation. So they're going to be a part of Funimation.
And that's all Sony owned now, right?
Right. It's all going to be one thing. I imagine that they'll probably just turn Crunchyroll into Funimation, or they'll probably leave them both open. Like they're both like, going to be continuing to be Crunchyroll and Funimation, but then like, it'll just be like the parent kind of company is the same. I don't know how they're going to do that, but.
Yeah, Scott and I were talking about that, where if and it's kind of the same thing with the Discovery purchase, where a lot of people are speculating, are they going to do a merged app, or are they just going to collect the money and keep them separate? And a lot of people are wondering the same thing with Crunchyroll and Funimation. And there's the other one that people watch too. I always mispronounce it, but there's another streaming one that people also jump on. And I don't know. What do you think this is? Do you think that's a good thing to have it all under this umbrella?
So that's a great question, Dan. So no, my principals tell me that it's a bad thing, right? But I don't care that much. Mostly because anime, while it's not as niche as I think we all would believe, it's not like Marvel's buying DC. In the West, those are the two most omnipresent, like, superhero brands. Like there is nothing else. I mean, there is, but not really to the average person, right? Funimation and Crunchyroll, they're pretty much the biggest streaming anime services here. So chances are, if you're not watching it on Netflix or YouTube, separated in 3 parts and translated from Spanish to English and subtitles, then you're probably watching on one of those two. So I would say, my concern, like speaking from a practical standpoint, would be, I'm always afraid that the arbiters, the gatekeepers of anime in the West will become too big for their own britches, to the point where they can dictate certain things to Japan. So that way it's like, hey, according to our analytics, our statistics, people like this X, Y, or Z thing, and you should add more. And then they'd be like, oh, well, I guess, if it's America Anime Incorporated, then it must be true,
Mm-hmm.
So that's my only concern, really. In general, Sony and animation, like my sentiments toward them are pretty positive. They made, Into the Spider-Verse, which is amazing. That one anime about the family and technology or whatever, which is great. I love their, Phil Lord and what's something Miller, Chris Miller. Yeah, they're doing some great work. They have a contract with Sony to do animation. And of course, they own Funimation and Crunchyroll. So, when I think animation now, I actually think in a lot of ways, I think Sony. So I don't know. My sentiment is pretty positive toward the company, but I do realize that this is, like anything else, precarious.
Do you know when this is all supposed to take into effect?
I don't know, but this stuff takes forever.
Yeah.
It always takes forever. Yeah.
That's one of the things where I was talking to Scott about it. I didn't know that the Phoenix Wright series was on Funimation. I was catching some episodes on YouTube, and I'm like, this is, pretty decent. I love the games, and this is just an anime adaptation of the cases from the game. Great, I'll watch it.
Do you have a Funimation account?
I don't, but that's what Scott was telling me. He's like, they're all on Funimation.
Yeah.
And
everything is, yeah.
But I forgot how much the thing was. It's like $8 or $12 a month, and I'm like, well, I just want to watch the Phoenix Wright series because I already have so little time as it is with what's on HBO Max and what's on Netflix. I'm still trying to get through Mayor of Easttown.
You still have HBO Max, but you don't have Funimation?
Yeah, there's way
For
more things I want to
shame.
watch on HBO Max than Funimation. I literally just watched
Yeah.
Phoenix Wright on Funimation.
That's true. Come on, let's be honest. Like Warner Bros. Has a huge, very influential
Yeah.
backlog. So I mean, I can't act like that's not a thing.
Like I could spend months on just the Turner Classic Movies section of
Oh
HBO
yeah,
Max. It's incredible, and that's
and
something they should
Crunchyroll
be.
actually has a little section in HBO Max too.
Right, yeah, that's true. That's how I've been able to
Watch.
catch some of those.
And matter of fact, if you ever get the opportunity, watch. It's called To Your Eternity,
And that's
and
on HBO Max?
it's on HBO Max via Crunchyroll. Their partnership. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Right, okay. Yeah, it'll probably be once that Sony deal hits, because I remember Warner Brothers used to own, I think, Crunchyroll. And once that all goes away because they sold it off to Sony, that'll
Mm.
probably leave HBO Max and they'll have to do separate anime deals, which seems like Netflix is getting a lot of those deals now. You're seeing a lot of anime and serious anime like Demon Slayer hitting
Mm-hmm.
Netflix.
Mm-hmm. Big time.
So yeah, I've been as far as anime, I've been watching that. The store's been up and down. You know, it's been whatever. A lot of the new Pokemon set released called Evolving Skies, and
Mm.
it's one of those things that we price at market value. You know, booster boxes are $140, whereas they used to be $120. The
Mm-hmm.
Elite Trainer boxes used to be $40. Now we're pricing them at $60, and they sell. People don't blink. And, you know, if
Mm-hmm.
I set the prices and it wasn't the company, but if I were setting the prices, I'd be like, let's put double on them. You know, let's find the
Mm-hmm.
ceiling on this
Sure,
fucking
sure.
thing.
You
So,
play games?
no, not really. I stopped playing
Okay.
video games as soon as I became a dad. Like I'm
Yeah, I'm an adult, so no.
well, it's one of those. I'm one of those gamers, and I
Yeah.
know some people are talented where they can put a game down for months and come back to it, and they'll know exactly where they left off. But I can, if I stop a game for a week, I'm like lost, and I got to relearn the
What is this?
controls.
Yeah. Who are you
So
people?
I did not stand the chance as soon as Leo was born of like, oh, a month later I can play a little more Phoenix Wright or a
Right.
little more Pokemon. No, it's done.
Right. Yeah, yeah. We're broke, not bankrupt, you know. We have some time and money to do things that we have to do.
Yeah,
But
exactly. And but I will say I did buy the new Phoenix Wright game and I've been playing a little bit of that. And at worst, I can look up a guide and see okay, where am I? Okay, I can do that.
sure.
But it's not a
Did
game that
you
requires skill, really.
They released a game called 12 Minutes. Have you heard of it?
No.
It's an indie game. You can get it on, it's a potato could run it. So you could pretty much get it on like a laptop or, on whatever. But it's actually starring Willem Dafoe. What's the Xavier? Professor X.
The older one or Sir Patrick Stewart?
No, younger one.
McAvoy.
McAvoy, yeah, James McAvoy. And then Ray Skywalker.
Daisy Ridley.
Yeah, there you go. It's starring those three people. It's basically like this top-down like drama where basically this person keeps reliving this same 12 minutes over and over again. And in general, it's a pretty short game. You can finish the game probably in well, it depends on how quickly you find out what you have to do, because you have to watch the trailer to kind of understand it. But it's a great game. It'd be really easy for you to pick up. It's only like 1 gigabyte in size, so it's super small.
Mhm.
Takes like just a few minutes to download. And if you like those actors, you'll instantly recognize their voices, and pretty cool little project. So something I would recommend if you want to kind of dabble in the games.
Yeah, thank you. It kind of reminds me of Heavy Rain. Did you remember that from PlayStation
It is
3?
a point and click kind of thing. Yeah.
Nice.
I love those kind of stuff. Yeah. Great studio.
Do they take the actors' faces also and kind of impose them on the characters, or did they not? It's not that kind of game.
No, it's kind of like top down. You get little bits of detail, but it's very undetailed. It's more kind of like, you could picture yourself in this situation kind of thing.
Gotcha.
But they give you this top down look, so that way you can see, like, if you cut the roof off the building basically and you look down, you can see everything, behind, like, into rooms, and that way it gives you kind of the ability to, I don't know, it's almost like a board game, almost kind of, but it's got like this narrative, and the time actually passes. Being that it's only 12 minutes, it's pretty easy to know, like, okay, in exactly like 5 minutes, a lightning is going to strike. So if I want to convince my wife that I've been repeating the same day, then I could use that to my advantage to get her on my side, to then do this, and the ripple effect to change the way that 12 minutes ends up.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I like that. And I like Bill Murray a lot. I like Groundhog Day, so it sounds like it's right up my alley.
Yeah.
I'll check out the trailer. Yeah, outside of that, though, I think that pretty much wraps up the Brocat block, unless you've got anything else you wanted to cover before you're on again.
Stay healthy, stay happy. Don't let anything get you too down. Watch a lot of Netflix, subscribe, pay for your anime. Don't do drugs.
And apparently I need a Funimation account.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe Sony will come out with their own streaming service, you know.
Yeah.
Sony Plus, you know, Sony Premium, Sony Ultra.
Plus Max.
Yeah.
Awesome. Millennial Mike, this has been awesome. Please let the Brocat Core member know on the other side where they can find you in case they want to continue the conversation.
Mostly Vero. I'm only Vero. That's where that's where my account is. I left OnlyFans after, they changed their policy.
Well, they reverted it. I don't know if you saw that.
What?
Yeah, it got reverted. It's going back to you could reopen your OnlyFans.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. We don't live in an uneventful time.
No, not at all. Like Bobby on our Discord, he was saying that he's like, "Oh, that was all intentional," and I'm like, "It was terrible PR. It was not intentional."
Yeah. No, that is terrible. Yeah, I don't think anyone's gonna look at them the same. Although I think it's gonna open a lot of areas for other companies to kind of take. They already have. I mean, honestly, like Twitch has been doing OnlyFans better than OnlyFans has been for a while.
Yeah, no, really, they have. Although they've started cracking down on some of that, like the hot tub streams and all.
Right. I think there's something about Twitch that, like, the fact that it's not meant for that, quote unquote, it's not meant for that. That's why people like it. It's like I'm getting something I'm not supposed to.
Yeah, that's true.
But then, like, why subscribe to OnlyFans? You can subscribe to Pornhub or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Awesome. Thank you again. As he said, you can find them on Vero. There will be links to his Vero and also to our Discord, which you are a part of as well. And you can talk to the other hosts on there too. And huge thanks again, Millennial Mike, for being a part of our Podcast Award nominated podcast now. You're a part of this year's nominee and nomination. So we'll see if we nab it next month. It'll be right around the time when you come back on is when we'll know if we took it for the second time ever and if we took it with all these amazing hosts like yourself. So thank you again for being a part of this.
Hey, much appreciated. It's great talking to you guys, and I really hope that you nab that win. You deserve it.
Thank you very much. Hoping, but grateful for that nomination in general. Fifth year in a row. It's huge, and huge thanks to everyone that took those couple minutes to nominate us. And to you on the other side, really appreciate you tuning in once again, whether this is your first episode or your 471st since 2012. We really appreciate you showing up week to week. And Brocat Core, as always, all will be well. So are you honest with the OnlyFans? Do you really subscribe to some OnlyFans accounts on there? I
mean, when you have your own, you don't need to subscribe. It's like, you make the art, you don't look at it, so.
Look, I don't blame anyone. It's one of those things where it's like, show my feet, show my ass, and get millions of dollars. All right.
If only I, as a non-female, were so privileged.
You know what? Throw it out there. Maybe there is a market. Maybe it's just, I don't know. There's got to be. I've got a dad bod. Maybe there's something there.
Right. I heard that there was a study that said, I'm adjusting my scientific glasses, that women like the beer gut more. Women like their man with curves. So.
I saw that, yeah. More about the beer gut rather than abs, which is crazy because you see the opposite in the way
right.
Women react and all that, and it's kind of interesting. I don't know if that means maybe they relate to it more, so they see it as like a stability thing. I don't know. Like I'm thinking about this too much now.
Like maybe he knows what it's like to be pregnant.
Well, or even like it looks more like the males in my life that I find stability or security in, or I don't know. Maybe I'd have to ask. I should just ask a woman, shouldn't I? We're sitting here pondering this thing. As soon as I get off of this, I'm gonna ask Kelly.
Yeah. Hey, Kelly, what do you think about my dad bod? What do you think about my beer gut? Does it make you feel secure?
Is this more familiar to you?
Yeah. Are you more secure in my beer gut than I am?